Let's talk about making a chaos spawn of Nurgle out of a Bloodbowl Ogre. Hi, my name is Ryan, and I'm the Uselesswizard. A little while ago, I was able to join 6 other content creators in a challenge called the 7 Chaos Spawn of Nurgle. The challenge itself is for each of us to create a chaos spawn of Nurgle in our own styles. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to make a chaos spawn that was some form of possessed or twisted or tainted being, and that you could still tell what it originally was before it had fallen to Nurgle. I settled on an ogre that had somehow become host to a fungal infection from Nurgle, and now had mushrooms of all different types sprouting out of its body. Just so you have a preview, here's a quick turntable shot of the finished conversion. There's no base or paint on it yet because I want to make the basing video separate from this video, and obviously the painting video is separate from this as well. Each one of those has specific things that I want to talk about, but if I were to put them all into a single video, it would be very, very long, and I'm trying to keep these short. After I had settled on an ogre, I needed to decide on which ogre model out of the Bloodbowl Ogre kit I was going to use. I wanted an action pose to help communicate the idea that this ogre had kind of lost its mind and was constantly ravenously hungry and charging in to whatever fight or whatever prey it sees to try and sate its ravening hunger. I think the running pose kind of helps with that. Once I had the pose, I just looked at the instructions, figured out which parts I wanted, and clipped those out and cleaned them up. I did want to make sure that both hands were free because I figured him in his madness wouldn't be using weapons or anything like that, so I did go with a couple free hands, but everything else was pretty standard. I did not use the shoulder pads because I wanted the shoulders to be covered in mushrooms. At this point, I needed to do something with the hole, the lack of a gut plate on this model left. One of the big aesthetic themes of Nurgle models is a gut mouth in both 40k and Age of Sigmar. You can look at Plague Marines and Blight Kings and Plague Bearers, and a lot of them have giant mouths in their gut, so I thought this would be an appropriate time to make him look even more Nurgle. It took some trial and error, but that's one of the things I really enjoy about doing conversions. There's always the chance to try something new or try something you haven't done before or you're not very good at. And sculpting is one of those things. I'm not very good at it. I haven't done it a whole lot, so I wanted to embrace this opportunity. So I grabbed some milliput, mixed it up, and I started working on the beginnings of a mouth, or at least the back wall of what I could sculpt or put some teeth into to make it look like a mouth. It took some fiddling, but I was finally able to get a solid foundation for the inside of the gut mouth. Once that's dried, I needed to make some teeth and get them in place. So what I did was put out some small sausages of milliput, cut them in half, turn them into cones, and that gave me some kind of needle sharp teeth. Then I added some milliput to the inside of the mouth so that I have a layer that I could embed the teeth into, and I proceeded to use some tweezers again and place them into the mouth. This was kind of a massive pain in the rear, but once it was done, it ended up looking really good. Now, once that extra layer of milliput had started to dry a bit, I actually knocked all the teeth out very gently. That left just the divots where the teeth were sitting in the milliput behind. Once that milliput dries, I'll be able to glue the teeth back in and have a much stronger bond. Then it was on to start making the actual mushrooms on this conversion. I started out by placing the stems of the mushrooms. Now I wanted to go after a style of like shelf mushrooms because I like the way they look, and they're typically found on dead and decaying trees and things like that. And I wanted to help give the idea that this Nurgle infestation has been sunk deep into this guy, and that wasn't just something surface at all. Once I had started off with the first stem, I added some texture once I had it in the shape that I wanted, just to give it a little bit of organic feel, and then I continued adding more stems around the body. I wanted to focus on the back, the shoulders, the head, and maybe something on the front. In fact, I did end up adding 2 to the front. Once I had completed most of the stems and added texture to them with my clave shaper, the milliput in the mouth had actually mostly cured. So at that point, I took some super glue, a pair of tweezers, and the teeth that I had created earlier, and glued them in. Now, once those were in place and the glue had set, I needed to complete the mouth. So I made another long sausage of milliput and put it around, smoothed it out to give the mouth some kind of weird looking lips. So I wanted the teeth to be deeper down inside, like it was connected to his core rather than out on the surface. Again, trying to communicate the idea that his corruption was deep down inside. Once that was dry and it could be handled, I started working on the mushroom caps. I took it section by section. I wanted to make sure that each cap I made was as low down as possible. That way, as I worked my way up, as I move around the body, the caps overlap one another in a more natural looking way. They don't really interfere with each other. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, added 2 stems and 2 caps to the side of his belly because I felt that that was lacking some detail compared to everything else, and I wanted to make sure I filled that in a bit. I used my clay shaper tool to press the milliput caps into place and then add texture to the top of them. Some divots, lines, things like that, because I didn't want the caps to be perfectly smooth. That would feel weird to me. And that's pretty much it for the conversion. It's pretty simple, pretty quick. It was a lot less complicated than I thought, except for parts of the mouth, but it was a really interesting conversion. It was a really interesting project. I'm very much looking forward to building a base for this, and then of course painting it. So as the last treat, here's the finished conversion. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this was part of a challenge with 6 other creators. And if you haven't watched their videos yet, there's a playlist up here in the corner, and I really suggest you go check out their stuff. It's all fantastic. And until the basing video comes out, I will see you next time. Remember, painting is good for the soul.